Disclaimer: if anyone has claustrophobia, beware. Today's true story may leave you gasping for air. Put the video on 1x speed because the line below is running. If you can hold your breath until the end of this line, only then should you watch further. That's how terrifying what follows is. On the night of January 4th, 2024, two experienced divers, Christopher Gate and Patrick, were preparing to dive in a lake formed beneath a gigantic hydroelectric dam in Belgium's Platte-Tail Reservoir. The dam had 4 massive turbines that pull water through to generate electricity all day. But the problem was that those turbines could start without any warning. The dive club had left the safety zone, where there was no security. At 5 in the evening, when most people had gone home, Christopher and Patrick started preparing for a night dive. This was not a normal dive. Everywhere around was silent. The turbines were off and it was pitch dark. They wanted a new experience. In pursuit of that, they found themselves in front of the dam intake tunnel. Then the water shivered slightly, and both felt strange vibrations. Without any warning, the dam activated, as if it had been waiting for them. Suddenly, 4 reversible pump turbines turned on and, at a flow of 106 cubic meters per second, began pulling water toward them. They had no time to react. That enormous force dragged both into the tunnel where the turbines sat and where the huge spinning blades awaited them. They were completely helpless. Even their underwater scooters failed against that force. They were thrown directly into the blades and were torn apart. By Friday morning, rescuers found small pieces of bodies below the dam, and human remains were found stretching a kilometer downstream. What a delta force can do, perhaps this incident will show you. This is real footage, claimed to be from Lake Oliver Dam, recorded on a GoPro. After that day, every checklist was double-checked. Every wall switch and lockout was checked twice, so divers could enter the water safely. A diver named Alex entered the waterfall chamber that connected directly to the lake. The door was hoisted up with a chain. His helmet camera recorded everything. At first, everything seemed normal, but then he felt a tug on his body. An invisible force was pulling him. Alex was fully aware that if a force near the dam pulled him, it would take him with it. As he thought this, his right arm was drawn toward a hole and then toward a 10-inch pipe, and the force began to pull him in. Escaping became nearly impossible. The delta pressure felt like lifting an entire car with one hand. His lungs compressed and it became extremely hard to breathe. The workers standing above panicked. Everyone was stunned because everything had been double-checked. The co-workers tried to figure out what invisible force was pulling Alex and found another hidden pipe that was not even listed on the lockout checklist. It took about 30 minutes. Very soon Alex lost consciousness. His body and chest were squeezed and he died a very painful death. But that was nothing compared to the story I'm about to tell next. You may have seen parts of it in short videos, but they missed the details, and those details are hard to explain in a short clip. Now hold your breath, because on February 25th, 2022, in Trinidad and Tobago, something happened that shocked the world. At 2:15 p.m., a company called LMCS Limited was contracted to repair a pipe belonging to Paria Fuel Trading. At around 2:30 p.m., a 5-diver maintenance team arrived. Kazi Mali, Youssef Henry, Faisal Kavan, Rishi Najesser, and Chris Budram. It was an ordinary day for them. They had no idea what would happen. To access the pipe, they used a habitat bell, fitted above the pipe so the air pressure would push the water out and create a workspace. One of the tasks was to remove an inflatable plug at port 6. That plug separated crude oil from seawater. After about 45 minutes, Kazi reached in with a tool wheel. His teammates began to deflate the plug. The wall opened and a tremendous blast of water rushed into the habitat like a flushing toilet, then swirled into the pipe like a tornado. If it had just been water, things would have been different. But the pressure was so great that none of the 5 had time to understand what had happened. They were pulled into the narrow pipe, gasping for air. Fortunately, within the pipe they were dragged to a tight spot where tiny air pockets existed and they could breathe intermittently. For those moments they thought they might survive, but the air pockets were small, the space cramped, and the oil made everything worse. They shouted and checked each other's condition. Eyes burning, ears ringing, bodies injured, lungs craving air. They cleared their airways as best they could and tried to breathe the foul, oily air. They kept their heads and bodies pressed against the pipe to make the most of every tiny pocket of breathable air, but it was uncertain how far they were from an exit. There were no torches, total darkness, and no sense of direction. If they went the wrong way, it would be a dead end. They decided to move together in a single direction, with Chris leading, then Kazi, then Yusef and Faisal at the rear. The pipe was full of oil sludge. Nothing was visible, but they kept moving despite injuries. After an hour of struggle, another problem presented itself. The air pocket at the front ended. The lead man swore that if he survived, he would bring help. They kept moving forward, heads up, trying to conserve breath, but occasionally oil entered their mouths, so their breaths were contaminated. They found an oxygen tank, which helped two of them reach the next air pocket, but their oxygen supplies began to run low. Chris's mask mouthpiece was broken, so he had to breathe through a damaged pipe. Chris promised Kazi that if he lived, he would bring help. Seeing another oxygen tank gave Chris strength. He moved forward through the 2.5-foot pipe desperately. The oxygen dwindled. He feared the pipe might open into an inflatable plug at the other end rather than an exit. When that tank died, he took a deep breath, called out the name of his superior, and pushed upward with all his energy. After about 2 hours of effort, at 4:45 p.m., with a lot of shouting and bagging, Chris was finally pulled out of the pipe. Once outside, he told the team that there were small air pockets inside the pipe and that his 4 colleagues were still trapped. At that point, LMCS's other crew could not be sure anyone was alive, but Chris's return sparked hope. A rescue team was formed and professional divers with equipment entered the sea. They tapped on the pipe and finally received a tapping response from inside, which must have brought immense relief to the trapped divers, who realized people outside were trying to reach them. But hope began to crumble. The trapped men kept struggling with injuries, breathing issues, and oily air. They waved and shouted, but no one could reach them. With every passing hour, carbon dioxide levels rose. Their breaths shortened. They were suffocating. They could do nothing but endure. The knocks and screams gradually faded and went quiet. The company claimed there was no safe rescue plan, so it did not allow other divers to enter because delta pressure could recur. Even though professional divers arrived with proper equipment and were willing to take the risk to save their colleagues, management did not allow them in. Some of the trapped men remained alive until Saturday. Some died by Monday either from injuries, oxygen depletion, or exhaustion while searching for an exit. No company offered support to the families of those divers. No compensation was given. Justice was nowhere in sight. No one faced criminal charges. Only in April 2025, for political reasons, did the government give the families and Chris a payment of $12.5 million each. The scariest thing is this: if Chris had not survived, the companies might have buried the matter and no one would have known. Nobody would have known that people were trapped alive inside a pipe, each second stretching like a day. I can't imagine what those trapped men felt, each breath waiting for help that never came. How horrifying it must have been for them. Some of them must have drifted in and out of sleep and awakened again. Perhaps some took their own lives deliberately, and some may have died waiting for rescue for days, keeping their heads pressed against the pipe to squeeze out whatever air was left. Imagine being trapped in a 30-inch oil-filled pipe, breathing and waiting. Every second the sound of death, no voice answering, no light, no hope. To live and to die in that condition, what is worse?